The 2017 Louisiana Coastal Master Plan is going to be released in January, and the state legislature will have to take a look at it and hopefully move it through and pass it, hopefully unanimously, because we need the plan now to move from the planning stages into implementation. Finally, we're going to have enough money to begin doing the large projects that we've been talking about for a decade, and we need to get started with it because the urgency is certainly there. Several years ago, we released maps, as you know, from the state, and it showed a pretty dramatic land loss in the year 2050. Well, now the new maps have come out, and I wish I could say that it was better, but it's much worse. The red lines of saltwater intrusion in the state in any storm event and through coastal flooding really means that we are losing at time almost every day a football field of land lost every hour, as the foundation says, to coastal erosion. And it's not getting better. With sea level rise, it's getting worse, and we could lose a third of our coast in the next 50 years.
What is the timetable for restoration if nothing changes between now and then?
If nothing changes by 2015, pack up and go home. We're going to lose most of the state's economic resources in the South, our navigation channels, our historic fisheries, our energy sector, and our transportation sector will all not be able to rebound from the loss of land that is impending.
Show you some maps, some land loss maps. So these are future without project maps. So these are the futures if we don't add any additional projects to the landscape. I want to make that very clear. And what you see here is this is that low land loss scenario at the end of 50 years. And the red is new land lost. That's not land that we've already lost in the past. That's land that we will lose or predict to lose. And the green on these maps is land gain. So you can see what it looks like at year 50 for the low scenario, the medium scenario, and the high scenario. And this is just a comparison so you can sort of see them side by side, low, medium, and high. Again, I want to stress this is with no additional action, no new projects put on the landscape, what we think we might be, what we might see. And there's a temporal component to this as well, so it doesn't all occur in the first 10 years, and it doesn't occur steadily over the 50-year period. And so it's important to understand that as we move forward. Here you see what it would look like in year 10, year 20, year 30, and when you get into year 40 and year 50 is really when you see things start to accelerate. And I'll run through those again real quick. 10, 20, 30, 40, and then 50. And so these changes in the landscape also affect the vulnerability of our coastal communities, our entire coast, in fact. And that's translated, of course, into water levels associated with storm surges. And so what you see here is a map that depicts what water levels might be for a 100-year event across the coast. The highest levels that you see here, sort of that purple color, is over 15 feet, and the blue colors are 1 to 3 feet, for those of you in the back if you can't read that. So this is an initial condition, what we would experience, what we think we've experienced now. This is at year 10 for the low scenario, and year 25 for the low scenario, and year 50 for the low land loss scenario. We'll go through the high scenario again. That was the initial conditions. This is year 10, year 25, year 50. Again, if we do nothing in addition to what we've already done today.
The first thing that has to be done is everyone needs to rally around the state's coastal plan. We have almost $10 billion coming to the state in the next 10 years. This was an unknown amount of money 10 years ago, so we have the first 10 years, and now we need to hold tight, keep those monies in trust, not let anyone raid that money, and get on with building the projects. Those projects will be large-scale diversions to move the sediments and nutrients, fresh water, from the Mississippi back into the wetlands, but also a mix of other projects like pipeline, sediment transport, and beneficial use of dredge material, and then individual transition projects that private sector folks can do like us, which is shoring up the banks of the Intercoastal Gulf Waterway so that we don't lose land on both sides of it. It's complex. It's going to take many different solutions, many roads to Rome on this one, but we're getting there and we're starting today.
It's important that we get it right. We're going to get a substantial amount of money coming from the BP oil spill. we'll get one shot at doing this, and God help us if we don't spend this money properly. So it's important that we're able to get together with stakeholders and discuss all the issues to make sure we get the most bang for our buck in spending this money the right way and getting the most flood protection and restoring the coast, because we won't get this opportunity ever again.
The first master plan was done in 2007, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. In 2012, we updated that master plan. Every 5 years we were required by state law to update the plan. The 2017, so now we're at 2017. The 2017 plan is about to be done, and it's it's got new science, got experiences, it's got lessons learned from what we've done to this point, and we're excited about it, what's coming out, and it'll be out shortly.
With the 2017 plan, which is coming out, we are faced with a time frame where we must get towards whatever we're going to do and do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. We are losing significant amounts of assets on a daily basis. The risk quota gets increased almost every year, and we can't afford to kind of sit back any longer and wait. It's been 15 years of tremendous study, tremendous analysis by the scientists and engineers trying to develop the appropriate types of actions that are needed. And now it's time to begin the process and get these things done, and we have the funds available, and we need to coalesce around this effort as a state, because it impacts not just those of us who live in the southern part of Louisiana, but quite frankly the entire state. And in many instances, the country itself.
We've been studying for a while, and the reason why we've been studying is because we haven't had much money. Well, now we've got this infusion of money from BP. We've got GOMESA coming down the line, and so now we've got something we can work with, and we can take these projects that have been defined in the master plan on a coastal, holistic basis and start implementing these projects.
Well, everybody who needs to be here is here. Yeah, you'll see the governor, the lieutenant governor, the division of administration, the head of CPRA, state legislators, leaders of the national organizations and local organizations sitting around this room. Today we're talking about making the coastal plan operational. So we have scientists, we have local interest leaders who have to all come together and compromise and say, my interest isn't any larger than the common interest. Once we get there, tomorrow we talk about financing, new ways to bring money, get large private sector investment, maybe private sector projects in the ground that they can make a little profit on and get the restoration moving quicker and without so many permitting delays.
A great Louisiana author, Harnett Kane, described Louisiana's coastal marsh like this. He said it's a place that seems to be unable to make up its mind whether it will be earth or water, so it compromises. And that compromise is really what brings us here today. The coastal marsh's inability to withstand the ravages of water and wind and whatever else has been done to it through the years, and that threatens obviously the livelihood and the economy of our state and indeed the whole nation. And that's really been a thrust of the discussion throughout the other two programs that we've been involved in, is to make sure that we keep in mind as Louisianians that it's not just our coast, it's America's wetland that is threatened. And we've now evolved to a point where we're staring right in the face of implementation, and where we finally have an opportunity with some real dollars coming in from multiple sources to be able to implement a master plan that again will get legislative scrutiny in the coming few months, and hopefully will enable us to go forward and do the kind of things that we have to do to make sure that we preserve this national treasure. If you stop for just a moment, all of us that have an interest in this from either an ecological or an economic standpoint, if we don't do what must be done, think about what is going to happen to the livelihood of Louisianians and the future of our nation, because this little part of the world that we treasure so much is such a critical part of what everyone in our nation and across the world is dependent upon. And so that's why the focus of where we are at this moment in time is so important. So I thank all of you for being a part of this. The discussions in the past have centered around compromises that do have to be made to make fundamental decisions as to the best way for us to proceed. And I can assure you, and I know the governor will reiterate this when he makes some remarks at some point during these 2 days, that our commitment is to make certain that every dollar directed to save America's wetland goes to do just that. And despite the incredible, in some people's views, insurmountable financial challenges we have as a state right now, we are not going to forsake the funding for America's wetland and for making certain that coastal restoration moves forward. And so despite all the challenges we're going to be facing, those dollars directed to this project are going to be spent as they're intended to be spent. And we look forward to having all of your input on making sure that that master plan happens in the most efficient and appropriate way.
It's such a big issue for Louisiana. And so I want you to know that I'm really honored to be here today to have this dialogue with you. And I'm also very happy that Governor John Bel Edwards is planning to come to join the discussion tomorrow. So I think that's a very critical component. When I became governor of Louisiana, I found a lot of things on my desk that needed attending to. But I want to tell you that Sidney Coffey and King Milling and Valmore Million and people such as yourselves were there. And while I had followed the issues rather diligently as lieutenant governor and as a legislator before that, and even while I was public service commissioner, I knew there was a lot of groundwork that had happened, but I was amazed at just how sophisticated this effort had grown. Our greatest problem was that we didn't have any money to actually do very big, significant projects. And so now we're on the cusp of seeing financial access. The Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act that gives us revenue sharing kicks in next year. And I hope that doesn't get changed by the Congress. We know that politics and needs can supplant things that are actually in the channels, but that is something we're counting on. And then in the Restore Act with the BP money, we see that there'll be some monies there to help restore the line, and actually we hope that it just gives us that launch that we can see some things done. So today, we see that cooperative processes are absolutely necessary. This room full of both public and private leaders who can take back to their stakeholders what we discuss in hopes of clearing the air and removing barriers for immediate implementation of the new master plan. Some of the same tough issues that were present when I was in office are still on the table today. They have not been resolved because they're really tricky. They're not easy things to deal with. When we serve the public interests, we have to acknowledge what individual interests will feel slighted. How will that affect individuals who are in the way of certain types of projects? How do we keep safe the funds that flow into the state? And I'm glad to hear the commitments, and we have to keep reiterating the commitments of the actual money that is to come should be invested in this effort. And so and we want to know how they flow in and how they're kept in a trust fund for restoration, because there are many financial needs that are competing for whatever available dollars are out there. What is the cost for coastal protection and restoration, and who is obligated to pay for what? I mean, these are some big issues that are on the table. What is the time frame for letting our people know how long we can expect low-lying areas to be secure? And knowing that not every landscape can survive, how do we accommodate for the communities and the businesses that will require relocation? And I think that's really a tricky question right there. Nobody wants to be moved involuntarily, for sure, and voluntary relocation is a really tricky issue. These are very difficult challenges, rarely faced by officials, and the closer to the problem, the higher the heat. So that's why these sessions organized by the CPRA and my friend Johnny Bradbury and the America's Wetland Foundation hold such great promise. What we discuss today and tomorrow can and will lead us to a summit in December where we can stand unified to describe Louisiana's master plan as critical to America's future. And we want to make sure that the world and our nation understands the significance that, that our situation holds. We need to talk to the world community because I think the lessons and the projects and the plans and the exercises that we do and actually when we fulfill our goals of restoration, I think we will be a world model. But it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and the finances that we've already identified, we know before we start are not sufficient amounts of money, but it's a good beginning. So thank you for being here, and I am delighted to be able to join you.
The need is great. You know how much we're losing every day, and it's survival. Last week we took a cruise along the coast, visiting all the shrimp and oyster fishermen for National Seafood Week, and it's disappearing as we speak. So drawing a line in the sand and stopping that deploring of the coast is so important that we get it right, because like I keep saying, this is our one chance to really put back what was there many years ago. We'll never put back what was there 100 years ago, but any kind of stopgap where we can stop it from progressing as quickly as it is will ensure that generations to come can enjoy the bounty that we get out of the marshlands of Louisiana.
The coast will never be what it was 100 years ago or even 20 years ago. But I'm encouraged by the fact that we have a holistic plan, that we have projects that are going to make a difference, that we can protect our communities and our culture and have resilience in what we do. So yes, I'm very, very encouraged on what we have coming down the pike.
Everybody who needs to be here is here. Yeah, you'll see the governor, the lieutenant governor, the division of administration, the head of CPRA, state legislators, leaders of the national organizations and local organizations sitting around this room. Today we're talking about making the coastal plan operational. So we have scientists, we have local interest leaders who have to all come together and compromise and say, my interest isn't any larger than the common interest. Once we get there, tomorrow we talk about financing, new ways to bring money, get large private sector investment, maybe private sector projects in the ground that they can make a little profit on and get the restoration moving quicker and without so many permitting delays.
It's not an easy thing to do. We understand there are issues involved, and part of this meeting today is to deal with those. But the fact of the truth is we've got to get going.
This is an amazing meeting. Rarely have these types of people sat in the room in the last 10 years. I think we have a new administration who's got their eyes on the ball. I think that they are focused, they're businesslike, and they're going to get these projects in the ground without politics playing too much of an issue, and with the Coastal Master Plan driving everything we do. That's the way a good business would do it, and the state is approaching it that way now. Governor Edwards and Johnny Bradbury, who are here, are making sure that the monies that are coming to the state stays in a trust, and that's exactly what needs to be happening right now, and it is.
If people have questions like more information about America's wetlands, what should they do?
You can go to americaswetland.com or americaswetland.org and receive information or comment on the program. We're going to be live streaming the 2 days on Facebook.